Archaeologists have published irrefutable evidence that people from the Indian subcontinent were residing and worshipping at the Egyptian port of Berenike at the beginning of the 1st millennium AD, a fascinating period when Egypt was under Roman rule. Since excavations started in 1994, archaeologists have uncovered thousands upon thousands of artifacts and ecofacts that attest to the port's far-reaching trade connections. These include objects originating from India. But what I'm about to discuss tells us that Indians were not just trading extensively with the Romano-Egyptians, they were actually residing in Egypt, and they brought their religions with them. I'm Madam Archaeologist, your go-to informant on everything archaeology, and in this episode, I'll go over the latest published finds, what they are, why they're important, and how they're changing what we know about life in one of Roman Egypt's most bustling port cities. Berenike was founded around 275 BC by the pharaoh Ptolemy II Philadelphus of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and it came to be one of Egypt's most important ports for the maritime trade of exotic goods. Located on the Red Sea, it links the Mediterranean world with the Indian Ocean, and items originating from the Iberian Peninsula and northwestern Africa all the way to Java flooded through this ancient trading hub. The port was used over many centuries, declining in the 5th century AD before its final abandonment by the mid-6th century. Many goods from South Asia arrived at and passed through Berenike during the Roman period. Pottery, coins, textiles, beads, and more have been excavated at the site. But the finds that I'm discussing here take things to another level. These include the remains of 3 stone representations of Buddha, the top part of a stone stele depicting Vrishni heroes, and another stele featuring a bilingual Greek and Sanskrit inscription. With the exception of one of the stone representations of Buddha, which was discovered in a small shrine in the northern part of the site, these objects were found associated with a sanctuary called the Temple of Isis. The Temple of Isis was the most important temple at Berenike, where people dedicated images of deities from different religions. The stele boasting the Sanskrit inscription and fragments of a marble Buddha statue were found in the temple's courtyard, while the stele depicting the Vrishni heroes and the stone Buddha head were found in an annex that was added to the temple in the 4th century or later and is thought to have served as a repository for earlier offerings. You can see the find spots in this plan here. The objects I'm discussing here were excavated between 2018 and 2022 and have been mentioned in field reports and online articles since then, so the finds aren't brand new. But it was just last month that the paper detailing a comprehensive analysis of the artifacts was published, and I'm going to share the latest research with you here today. Let's start off with the stone Buddhas. We have a head that's missing its body and 2 standing Buddha sculptures. The 2 standing Buddhas, which comprise a statue with its head found separately and a smaller headless statuette, are considered to be of the Gandharan type of standing Buddha. This type developed sometime in the 1st to early 2nd century AD, when Gandhara and northern India were part of the Kushan Empire. But the Berenike pieces also differ from the Gandharan examples in a few regards. For example, the garments of the Gandharan Buddhas cling to a slightly muscular body, whereas the garments of the Berenike Buddhas appear looser, especially on the smaller statuette. And when we look at the head of the larger Buddha, although it contains features typical of Buddha representations, such as elongated ears, the top knot, and a nimbus behind the head, the face is ultimately Greco-Roman in style. The hair is also represented by tightly packed, ring-shaped curls rather than the slight waves that are typical of Gandharan representations. We do see curls on later Gandharan Buddhas, although they look a bit different, and the execution of the Berenike Buddha's curls actually seems to have been inspired by the toupees worn by Roman women from the end of the 1st century AD to the first half of the 2nd century. It is a very peculiar choice on the sculptor's behalf, the reason of which eludes us. The carved nimbus behind the head is also not typical of the Gandharan examples, but it is nevertheless connected to the Buddha. The larger carving is made out of marble, likely sourced from Paros, but carved locally in Egypt probably during the late 1st century AD or the first half of the 2nd century, either in Alexandria, which was the major hub for importing, processing, and sculpting marbles, or maybe it was created by Alexandrian sculptors temporarily residing at Berenike to carry out their commissions. The smaller statuette's material is uncertain. It is an extremely fine-grained stone, maybe gypsum that was locally available along the Red Sea, and so the statuette may have been carved in Berenike itself. But either way, the important thing is that these sculptures were not produced in South Asia. The materials and style make us certain of this, and the pedestal of the largest standing Buddha is also very Roman-looking. Here's the third piece in this category, the carved Buddha's head. His eyes and mouth connect him to other sculptures produced at Berenike, a couple of which are representations of local deities, as you can see here. But his hair connects him to India and, specifically, representations of the Buddha. He's missing some typical features, like elongated earlobes, the urna, and the nimbus behind the head. But the fact that the artifact was found in a temple context where another representation of Buddha and the Sanskrit inscription were found makes an association with the Buddha likely. Some details, like the urna and the ears, could have been painted and no longer survive. The object was carved out of locally available gypsum, which we know was widely used for the production of other sculptures at Berenike, and when we consider this with the style of the face, it's likely that our carved Buddha head was locally produced at Berenike as well. It has been dated to sometime between the reign of the Roman Emperor Hadrian and the 4th to 5th centuries AD. This votive stele was also produced locally at Berenike and crafted, likely sometime in the first 2 centuries AD, from the same locally available gypsum. While the design of the stele is clearly Roman, the 3 carved human-like figures stand out because, according to the paper, they represent the Vrishni heroes Samkarshana, Vasudeva, and Ekanamsha, who are associated with Hinduism. There are 5 Vrishni heroes, and they could be worshipped individually or in groups, including triads. When Samkarshana, Vasudeva, and Ekanamsha are found together, they are referred to as the Vrishni Triad. And this stele from Berenike boasts the only known Vrishni Triad depiction outside of the Indian subcontinent to date. It's interesting because while the sculptures I discussed a moment ago are clearly Buddhist, the Vrishni heroes are linked to Hinduism. Perhaps the coolest of all the finds is this stele featuring a bilingual Greek and Sanskrit inscription, also carved locally out of the same gypsum that was used for the Vrishni stele and the Buddha head. This stele is dated to the year AD 248, and this is the first time a Sanskrit inscription has been found in an ancient Egyptian context. You can read a translation here. What you are seeing is the dedication of a Buddhist image by a man named Vasula. It's interesting that the stele was found alongside the marble Buddha in the temple courtyard, which was actually the normal spot for dedications. Many bases of statues were found in that courtyard, and so the Buddha statue and the stele would have been standing there alongside other representations of deities. Why there's this big empty space on the stele remains unknown. It's possible that a smaller statuette once stood in front of the stele in the empty space beneath the inscription, although there are other possibilities too. Not only is this the first Sanskrit inscription found in Egypt, but it's also the only Sanskrit inscription known to date that mentions a Roman emperor. It's both a unique piece at present, and part of a wider range of evidence that tells us some interesting new things about life at the ancient port town of Berenike. We've long known that Indian goods made their way to the port, but this new evidence tells us that Indians, or individuals from the subcontinent, were also residing at Berenike at the beginning of the 1st millennium AD. How long they stayed, we don't know, but it had to have been at least temporarily in order for them to have commissioned these sculptures, which were either certainly or likely sculpted in Berenike itself. It's interesting that all the artifacts discussed here blend Greco-Roman elements with Indian ones. Sanskrit and Greek were combined in a Buddhist dedication. The sculptures blended Greco-Roman and Indian iconography. And Vrishni heroes were depicted on a Roman-style stele. This fusion of cultures doesn't just attest to impressive trade relations established in ancient times, it shows us that Berenike was a cosmopolitan place, where people were actively sharing and reinterpreting their ideas and artistic traditions. It's also worth noting that the South Asians at Berenike were worshipping alongside locals and other foreigners at the Temple of Isis. Other people from non-Egyptian cultures were also dedicating statues there. For example, in addition to the Egyptian goddess Isis, people from the kingdom of Meroe, in the present-day Sudan, dedicated a statue of their Meroitic god Sebiu-Mekher at the entrance to the temple, the usual place for such in Meroitic temples, but blending in local Egyptian iconography, so that we see, again, a fusing of cultures. In this context, the South Asian Commission artifacts fit into this wider theme of cultural exchange that was taking place during the Roman period at the multicultural port of Berenike, and this meeting of different cultures helped shape a lively and dynamic community there. The Berenike Buddhas, the stele with the Sanskrit inscription, and the stele featuring the Vrishni Triad are no doubt some of the coolest artifacts uncovered at Berenike. They are our first direct evidence of South Asians not just having traded extensively with the Romano-Egyptians, but having actually resided, at least temporarily, at the port during the Roman period. Hopefully, as excavations progress, we'll uncover material that will shed more light on their life in this cosmopolitan trade hub. That's it for today. Feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts in the comments section below. I also have a Patreon account where I'm offering exclusive content and perks to paid members, so if you're enjoying my content here on YouTube, make sure to check it out. You can find the link in the video description and in my channel's bio. Subscribe for more cool content by our go-to informant on everything archaeology, Madam Archaeologist.